Okay, well, welcome everybody. We're going to talk about key performance indicators. It's a term that is thrown around freely, and yet it needs a lot of definition. So let's talk about definition. You can have a key performance indicator between two companies that would be called the same thing, but are actually measured differently. So as an example, a key performance indicator like mean time between failure. Some companies would measure that as an occurrence that has to happen where there's at least 3 or more failures in order to get a mean time. Other companies would measure it and say, well, there's going to be a specific number of failures in a specific time frame before I measure it as a mean time. So defining a KPI is going to be absolutely critical and can be very personal to your business. The second thing is that in tracking KPIs, you need to make sure that there's consistent processes associated with the collection of data. One of the failures of a lot of systems, processes related to CMMS is the ability to track data on a consistent basis, okay? In other words, how are you tracking a downtime? Is everybody reporting it the same way? Are they putting their time against it and recording it as a downtime? Or another tracking issue would be, I want to identify PMs that are created as a result of a PM. In other words, I did what I was supposed to do on a normal PM, but I found deeper problems, and so I've created a PM to go in and fix before it breaks. You know, so there's all sorts of process-related issues that need to be tied to KPIs. You need to review the data. It's one thing to collect information in a system, but more importantly, when you're tracking it, you need to review it, because there will be things that you'll find because of people and because of normal human turnover and things like that, that you will have inconsistencies, and needs to be an ongoing management of quality of data and consistency of data related to whatever you're going to track. You also need to plan. The question comes up many times of, well, mean time between failure. Everybody wants to know what the mean time between failure is on something. Well, is that the real question? Is that the real issue that you want to track? Or is it the frequency of PMs versus the frequency of failures? In other words, plan and review, what are you measuring and why? I can set up a KPI to show mean time between failure, and that's good information potentially, but the real question might be is, if I did PMs more frequently, could I fix that? Or am I not doing PMs? Am I not getting to my PMs? And as a result, I'm having failures. So the planning and the review and the organization of what am I tracking and why is going to be very, very critical in how we approach key performance indicators. And then finally, taking action. To collect information and not do anything about it is a sin. So it's absolutely critical that we would take action to improve or manage the improvement of the things that we're measuring. I have different clients in different businesses that have different KPIs. In the facility business, for example, one of the things you might want to measure is the time that between a service request comes in and the time that you complete that service request and get the survey potentially back from the customer on the quality of the work that the technician did. Was it timely? Did they leave the area neat and things like that? So surveys can be part of key performance indicators too. But in the facility management side, mean time between failure isn't as critical potentially in a situation like a production line as customer service. Did I service them on time? Were they happy? What did it cost? What does the average too hot, too cold temperature cost me? Okay. I worked with a municipality where hot cold costs were their number one maintenance call for service, right? And they measured the number of hot cold calls and the cost of them. But then more importantly, one of the things that they began to analyze was the fact that, well, people had heaters in certain areas, and some people had refrigerators, and some people had other things plugged in that weren't technically authorized. And they started to develop policies. In other words, they took action to go in and fix the problem of the hot cold call. They also wanted to measure how many times do I have a hot cold call to this room. In a hospital environment, I had a client that measured the fact that they had a hot cold call. Okay, well, the first time the technician went in and assumed that it might be a thermometer problem, so they replaced the control on the wall for $75 or $80 and assumed that the problem was fixed. The next time they get a hot cold call to that room, it's critical that the next technician realize that somebody did the replacement of the thermostat. But in this particular case, they had no system in place. So the next technician went in and replaced the thermostat. And then they got another hot cold call and they replaced the thermostat. And this happened 5 times in the same room at $75 a thermostat, and it wasn't the thermostat at all. It turned out there was a deeper issue that was causing the problem. So the value of KPIs come in the review, the planning, and the action that you take with them. We can talk about benefits of KPIs, but the key performance indicator is only good if you do something with it. Just collecting data by itself, not managing the quality of the input, not managing the source, the processes associated with it, yield no benefit whatsoever. But there can be great benefits associated with KPIs if you take the full circle of action. In other words, you've defined why you're measuring, you're tracking the consistency, the quality of the data, you review it to make sure that it's consistent and there's quality associated with it, you plan and review and take action against that KPI, and then you will have great benefit. We can talk about different reports and dashboards. Everybody wants to see things summarized so that they're easy to review. And of course, Proteus has a significant number of KPIs relating to the system. We have things like how many PMs versus DMs did I do, and how many PMs are on time and complete, and how many are overdue. I know everybody finishes all of their PMs on time and it's never a problem. tongue-in-cheek, he says, but in reality, I know for a fact that we have many, many clients that have not enough resources to get all the PMs done in the time frame that they're scheduled. And again, that's a metric that you want to look at and evaluate. Why am I doing the PM? If I did it, does it keep the system up and running more effectively? If I don't do the PM, if I run to failure, what happens? What's the cost associated with that? There's different costs and different effects associated with different pieces of equipment. Safety is an absolutely critical thing regardless of the industry that you're in, and to be able to measure regulatory compliance. In other words, if I'm in a warehouse business or if I'm in a production business and I've got some shipping docks, have I checked my dock locks daily? Do I do the weekly and the monthly and the quarterly maintenance on those dock locks, or do I ensure that I have a contractor doing that work? And do I have the reports associated with that work attached to my work order so that I can show anybody, should there be an issue, that in fact this has been taken care of? So reports and dashboards are absolutely a critical part, and they are forms of key performance indicators. We want to talk about best practices. Depending on the particular business that you're in, whether you're in facilities related to manufacturing, if you're in facilities related to warehousing, distribution, if you're in an office building, or any other type of business, government agency, it's absolutely critical that you know what the best practices for your industry are. And again, the key performance indicators relating to your industry are things that you should be looking at. As an example, if you're in the pharma business, you know, to be able to show that your machines are properly calibrated, that they have been tested at the appropriate levels and recalibrated and are measuring correctly, is an absolutely critical best practice. On the same hand, if you're in warehouse distribution, being able to show on-time deliveries, being able to show safety, compliance, and things like that are all part of best practices. And again, when we think about key performance indicators, we want to make sure that we align our key performance indicators with what best practices our industry has established or any regulatory body has established for us. So in summary, we want to look at, you know, how should this data be represented from a best practice standpoint? Does a graph tell me what I need to know? Should it be a line chart, a bar chart, a scatter graph? How do I want to represent the data is one of the key decisions that one would have to make relating to the information that you're going to keep in relationship to a key performance indicator. Statistics, you know, you can represent things in different formats, and one format will show you or appear to show you information that, you know, leads one way, and you can show the same information that would tend to lead in a different direction. So how you represent your data in your key performance indicator is another consideration, so that everyone in your organization that needs to see that information and work with it and understand it is going to view it from the correct perspective. Okay, A lot of the key performance indicators, people use the green, yellow, red concept, and that's a great concept to incorporate. Again, the scale, the size of the chart, the information that's represented, you have to really evaluate, is it really telling us what we need to know in order to effectively run our business? Again, the number of PMs that I do is one measurement that I could report, but if I have downtime that's excessive, regardless of the number of PMs that I'm doing, that's not representing what I need to from a company perspective. So the consideration of what am I showing, how am I showing it, what's the effect? Okay, go back to that analyze and review step. It's very critical that you really, let's say I've done 500 PMs this month. That's great. I have 3 guys that did them, but I've got, 100 hours of downtime and stuff didn't get out the door. So what are you measuring and why is the real critical question when it comes to KPI analysis. Clients that we work with that are in the facility business, they manage office buildings, college campuses, and things like that. And then we've got other clients that are in the manufacturing sector, food and automotive and so forth. And it's interesting because there's always the aspect of the facility associated with whether you're in manufacturing or wherever. And it's important to remember that there are, a lot of different things that you can measure. And the key, again, to measuring and key performance indicators is getting data that's quality and data that is significant and has a meaning to your organization. We've had clients, for example, in the past that look at the cost of work orders by labor craft. A labor craft could be carpenter, plumber, electrician, and so forth. And it's interesting because you can look at the cost and you know that, let's say an electrician across the board costs you $85 an hour. Well, that's fine, but then you can look at the work type that person is doing in the system. And let's say picture hanging is one of the work types. We've had clients that find that it's easier to get a art gallery to come in and hang pictures for a lesser cost than the cost of a carpenter, for example, doing that work. You can look at the number of work orders completed by a technician. In other words, who's doing work and how much work. The cost of responses to service requests. So I've got hot cold calls in my building, or I've got lights out calls. I've got different types of responses. What are those types of calls costing me? Is another key performance indicator. And another measurement in the facility might be from the time a service request is created to the time it's completed. What's my average response time? This is all the type of data that you can get out of our system. And different clients, again, require different types of information. They want to look at the number of PMs completed on time, the number of work orders by craft. So let's say that I've got electrical technicians on my staff, but 90% of the work that they're doing has nothing to do with electrical technician work. The question becomes, is the cost of that person worth the time and effort to keep them on the staff for the 10% of the time that they're actually doing work that they're qualified for? I can look at work orders by different priorities and by different locations. So let's take a look at some of the KPIs. In the manufacturing center, one of the most critical is looking at assets by downtime. And we've got clients that look at this in bar charts, line charts. I mean, how you look at it is again, a personalized type of thing. But number one, the system allows you to identify critical assets. And critical assets are those that, let's say, if they're down, the entire production line is down. Something's not going out the door. So you identify that as a critical asset. And we can measure the downtime based on properly filled out work orders, okay? That's one simple KPI. Another one would be demand and preventive maintenance hours by month. And we can break that down further by technician and machine and work type and facilities, different facilities and so forth. But where am I spending my time? Is 80% of my time on preventive maintenance and 20% on break fix, or is it the other way around? A lot of times when we start with clients, it is the other way around. 85% of their work is break fix work, and the goal is to turn it into preventive maintenance, which we all know is more effective and takes less time. Another one in the manufacturing sector is mean time between failure, and I can measure that by machine and see specific work orders associated with that particular piece of equipment. And again, different clients measure mean time between failure differently. The ability to identify how you want to measure mean time between failure is, again, something that we work with specific clients on and make sure that it's done correctly for them. Mean time to repair. So once a machine breaks, how long does it take us to repair that particular machine? We don't, if you're not measuring it, how do you manage it? Quiet. So measuring mean time to repair, again, does it come from the time the work order is created? Does it come from the time the technician arrives at the machine to begin repair? How do you want to measure that in your particular environment? Again, very personal. Clients view it differently. One of our default screens when you begin is to look at work orders by work type. Are they preventive or break fix work orders? And then on the right side at the top, we see those that are open but not overdue. And then we also have the ability to have overdue work orders show, and that's on a real-time basis. So as work orders are opened and closed, people get to see exactly what's happening. And then we can look at work orders by location as well. The ability to see work orders where they are is something that is critical in knowing where your resources are and where they're being planned and used throughout the day. Costs. Costs are absolutely critical. We want to look at what does the work order cost? What does it cost to maintain a particular piece of equipment? Is that particular piece of equipment costing more to repair and maintain than it would to buy a new piece of equipment? Not typical in manufacturing, but very typical in facilities. We can look at total hours by trade or skill, okay? In other words, work type. How am I spending my time? Am I spending it escorting somebody in our factory? Am I spending that time, on planned maintenance? Am I spending it on mechanical? Again, looking at the percentage of how total hours are spent within our organization helps us manage more effectively. Root cause failure. Some clients absolutely require this. Others could care less. And again, it relates to the fact that key performance indicators are very personalized for our clients. All of the information that's available in the CMMS can yield this type of information. We work diligently with our clients prior to implementing our CMMS to look at their both short-term and long-term goals. And when we say long-term, 5 to 7 years down the road, not only what does the maintenance manager want to know, what's the production manager want to know, what does the CFO want to know, what does the schedulers want to know, and we put the parameters in place up front to be able to capture the information. We work with our clients to make sure that the processes are documented as well, so that as there is turnover, as there's new people come and go, we have documentation to talk about the process so that the data is consistent from person to person. Of course, it's up to the facility or maintenance manager to ensure that on a day-to-day basis, and we have different ways of helping with that. We have things like required fields that can be forced into the system before you can close a work order and things like that. So in summary, we can look at hours, we can look at mean time to repair, we can look at mean time between failure by machine, by plant, number of incidents where production is stopped by machine or by work type, by work orders by priority, and putting all of this information together in your particular case as a user of Proteus will give you a significant amount of information to manage with. Again, it's just like it's very personalized. It's important to be able to make some decisions early on, but even we've had clients where, oh, I want to start measuring this, and we help them put the parameters in place. They document the processes, and they've added in additional information into the system so that they can start capturing data as they go forward. So it's not an all or nothing thing. It's, we try and help you think about and identify key performance indicators from the beginning, but it's something that as you go forward, you may have different needs. It's important to go back and look at, why am I collecting this data? Is it significant to the business today? Because something we did 3 years or 4 years ago in collecting information may or may not be significant anymore. We may have automated something, we may have moved a process around so that something we were measuring 3 years ago no longer becomes important. So part of the manager's job in managing the CMMS system is to make sure that everything that you are gathering information on, your key performance indicators, are current with the needs of the business. All of the KPIs that I've talked about, we've done for one or more customers. A lot of them are there's a few standard key performance indicators that we provide, like the opening dashboard and so forth on PMs versus DMs, and overdue versus on time, and completed but not closed. But there is the ability with every customer to have those personalized and customized key performance indicators as part of the system. The key is identifying the process, identifying the consistency to get that data so that you know you're getting good data. So again, there's a ton of key performance indicators. I appreciate your time today, and thank you very much for your attendance.